All right, now in the last, that first part, we looked at where we focused mainly on our animal-like protists, our protozoans. Okay, in this part, we're going to be looking at our plant-like protists, which is going to be our algae. So let's get started with our plant-like protists. Okay, our plant-like protists are similar to plants on how they obtain their nutrients, but that's pretty much it. They do not have roots or stems, leaves. They don't have any other of those characteristics that you would assimilate with plants, other than the fact that they do have chloroplasts to allow them to be photosynthetic like plants. So let's look at our algae, our plant-like protists. They can photosynthesize, okay, and so our protists that do go through photosynthesis we're going to call algae. They can have up to 4 kinds of chlorophyll that would be present within their chloroplasts. Okay, and remember, chlorophyll is that green, that is that photosynthetic pigment, that pigment that can absorb different radiation wavelengths. Okay, the different chlorophyll, depending on the algae, is what's going to give you the different color of algae that we can see. You can see purple algae, a red or dark red type algae, almost a greenish brown. You can have yellow algae, a yellow brown, and then obviously your just your regular green algae. So all of these different colors of algae, they're going to be different colored because of the type of chlorophyll or that's found within their chloroplasts. All right, so what are algae? Okay, so our algae include both unicellular and multicellular organisms, so they are going to be single-celled and multicelled depending on the type of algae we're looking at. The single-celled protists or the single-celled algae are going to be called phytoplankton. Okay, there are a large, extremely large number of phytoplankton found in our aquatic environments, especially in our oceans. They also are one of the largest producers of oxygen that come from our aquatic systems. Are going to be our phytoplankton. So even though our forests and trees and flower and plants produce oxygen and a large amount of it, think about the surface of the earth is covered 70%, 75% water, and in that water you're going to find a very large number of phytoplankton, which is going to be producing oxygen. So most of the oxygen within our atmosphere is replenished by the phytoplankton. So let's start getting into the types of algae. Okay, you have euglenoids, which can be autotrophs or heterotrophs. Your euglenoids are going to be unicellular. They're going to be green in coloring. Okay, when you look at them under a microscope, they do contain chloroplasts with green chlorophyll. They have both plant and animal characteristics, though. Okay. Their plant-like characteristics would be the chloroplast and the chlorophyll that it contains, and the euglenoid's ability to photosynthesize. Its animal-like characteristics are that there isn't always sunlight available. Okay, so if there's no sunlight available, it can't go through photosynthesis. So when they're in need of energy, during the times when sunlight is not available, they can always ingest food and get food through that process or get nutrients through that process. But they're still going to be considered plant-like because of the fact that they contain those chloroplasts. Okay, here's another type of algae. These are our golden algae, our diatoms. Okay. A diatom, these are single-celled, microscopic. They are very unique in the fact that they have distinct shapes. Okay, distinct shapes that make them up, and you can see these two pictures and how these different, how each individual diatom has a unique shape. They have little grooves on them, almost like a, uh, a small sculpture that was created with the carvings and the grooves and the structures that are built into them. So these are our diatoms, mostly going to be saltwater, these golden algae. Now, the food that the diatoms make, okay, their food source that they make through photosynthesis is actually going to be produced as a lipid or stored as a lipid, not as a carbohydrate. So it's going to be stored as an oil rather than as a starch. And these oils, these polymer oils, are actually what fish, when the fish that are in the oceans that feed on these diatoms, and you eat the fish, and the fish has an oily taste, kind of like a tuna or maybe salmon, an ocean fish like that kind of has an oily taste. That oily taste comes from that fish's diet, which is mainly going to be of these diatoms. The oils that are its food that it makes instead of starch, when it makes these oils, these oils also give these golden algae buoyancy, which means it allows them to float almost like a balloon, and they can float near the very tops of the surface water. Okay, when they eventually do die, now there's tons and tons of them. So even though they're a food source for a lot of different organisms in the ocean and in the aquatic environments, there are a lot of them, so there's a very small chance of them ever running out. But when they do die, if they're not eaten, their shells that make up those patterns that we looked at on the slides before, they sink to the ocean floor, okay, and they build up over thousands and thousands of years. But what we do is we will mine for those and dredge for those on the ocean floor, and then when we get them, we will process their shells and use them as polishes and toothpastes, or put their shells in polishes and toothpastes and paints to give, to be like abrasives for cleaning, or to give sparkle and shine to different types of things that we use them for. So we do use them for our purposes as well. So those are our golden algae, or diatoms. Okay, here is a type of algae. It is called a dinoflagellite. So these are the flagellates. Okay, dinoflagellates, they have two flagella. Okay, one, if you can see, extends down in this picture towards the bottom, and the other is going to extend out towards the side. Through these grooves is where they extend. All right, and they're going to be at right angles of each other. And what they allow these particular algae, these spinning algae, these dinoflagellates to do is to slowly spin as they beat the flagella. Okay, so they're not quickly spinning, they're slowly spinning, slowly moving. They carry on symbiotic relationships with jellies and with mollusks and corals. Okay, they provide oxygen and certain nutrients, and then the jellies and mollusks and coral would provide a safe haven, okay, for them for living space. A lot of these dinoflagellates are really neat when you can see them in the absence of light, because they are bioluminescent. Okay, and there's a lot of microscopic or very tiny organisms that maybe aren't microscopic but very small in size, that are bioluminescent within the ocean, and the dinoflagellates are one of those examples. They have their own light source that they can emit, kind of like a flashlight. Sometimes it flashes, and sometimes it goes on slowly and goes off. But this bioluminescent, this light that they can produce, is produced through chemical reactions, and that's how all bioluminescent organisms within the ocean produce their light source. There is a toxic species. It produces a really strong nerve toxin. It's a defense mechanism. okay, of these spinning algae. Um, they during the summertime they can be found in numerous areas along ocean in the oceans, at the surface of the oceans during their reproductive times, and they can cause the maybe parts of the ocean or maybe ocean tides to look reddish in color, okay, because they do group together during parts of the summer uh, during their reproductive times. Um, and we call this, it's not a phenomenon, but we call this event the red tide. So sometimes you can have these red tides form when you have a really large amount of these dinoflagellates come together during the summer for those purposes. Now, the red tides, these toxins that are produced through these processes that they carry out, they can be harmful to humans. And so when there are red tides, humans usually don't interfere with them because of the high amount of toxins that are produced during these times. All right, now some other types of algae. You have red algae, brown algae, green algae. Very straightforward. Our algae that's red, brown, or green as far as labeled, they're going to be multicellular. Okay, they're going to live down in deeper parts of the ocean, past 30 to 50 feet and even lower. Where your green water plants like seaweeds cannot grow, this is where you'll find algae. Okay, along corals, even further down. Okay, this is where you're going to find algae. And now the red, brown, and green algae, these multicellular algae that are found deeper down, sunlight cannot penetrate very well past a certain point. Past 90 feet, 80, 90 feet, you're going to have a lack of sunlight. So the chlorophyll within these particular algae are adapted very well to absorb small amounts of sunlight that filter very slowly through deeper parts of the ocean. The largest and most complex of these algae is going to be the brown algae. They form kelp. Okay. There are other protists like fungus. They're going to be considered fungus-like. Okay. They decompose dead organic matter that is found within the aquatic environments, and these are going to be our fungus-like protists. An example would be a slime mold. But unlike a fungus, these fungus-like protists, they can move, and they don't have, and we haven't talked about fungus yet, but fungus have a type of material that form the cell walls of a fungus called chitin, okay, or chitin, however you want to say it. But these fungus-like protists do not have that particular compound or substance that form their cell walls. They do have the ability to move, for most fungus that is land-based, or fungus that can be found in aquatic environments cannot move. It would be considered sessile, and sessile is just a term we use for organisms that cannot move. They're fixed to the substrate or to the ground that they are living on. But our fungus-like protists do have the ability to move, but they are going to be similar to fungus in the fact that they are the decomposers of the protist kingdom.